Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new legal breaking reporting that is factual and non-fabricated and more that you need to know about. We have a total of 10 reportings for your morning of Friday, February 27, 2026. Let's get into them. By the Washington Post, we have our briefing. Then we have 3 other reportings read by automated voices by The Hill. Let's get into them, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, before we begin, please make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe, as well as enjoy for more factual, non-fabricated legal breaking reportings that you need to know about in video analysis updates that are factual and non-fabricated. Let's get into it without further ado.
President Donald Trump is being urged to take more executive power over elections. That's where we're starting the 7 from the Washington Post. I'm Hannah Jewell. It's Friday, February 27th. Let's get you caught up with today's 7 stories. Our first story today is a Post exclusive. Pro-Trump activists who say they are in coordination with the White House are circulating a 17-page draft executive order. It claims that China interfered in the 2020 election and uses that as a basis to declare a national emergency that would unlock extraordinary presidential power over voting. Peter Tickton is a Florida lawyer who is advocating for the executive order and went to school with Trump. Tickton argues that declaring a national emergency would empower the president to ban mail ballots and voting machines that he claims are vulnerable to foreign interference. Trump has been pressuring Republicans in Congress to pass legislation to require proof of citizenship for voter registration and ID to cast ballots. That measure, called the Save America Act, passed in the House but faces obstacles in the Senate. Trump has said that if the bill fails, he will act unilaterally to impose the changes for the midterms. What that executive order could look like and the draft circulating among activists have not been previously reported. Number 2. A partially blind refugee left in a parking lot by Border Patrol was found dead. Last week, Border Patrol agents released Nurul Amin Shah Alam in the parking lot of a closed coffee shop in Buffalo. The Post obtained security footage of a white van dropping off a man that night wearing clothes that matched the ones Shah Alam was wearing when he was arrested. The 56-year-old then disappeared, and relatives spent days searching for him. He spoke little English and was partially blind. 5 days later, he was found dead near an arena in downtown Buffalo, about 5 miles from where he had been dropped off. Shah Alam was a member of Myanmar's persecuted Rohingya minority. He arrived in the U.S. in 2024. Immigration agents released him after finding he was not deportable. A spokesperson for Border Patrol said Shah Alam did not show signs he needed special assistance. Democrats and advocacy groups demanded an investigation into his treatment. Number 3 is another Post exclusive. Vice President J.D. Vance said there is no chance of a drawn-out war with Iran. In an interview with the Post on board Air Force 2 yesterday, Vance said the U.S. would not get involved in a years-long war in the Middle East. That's even though President Trump is currently weighing up potential military strikes on Iran. Vance said he remains a skeptic of foreign military interventions and pointed to operations in Iran last year and Venezuela in January as examples of swift military interventions. But he said he does not know what Trump will decide to do about Iran this time and whether there will be strikes or a diplomatic solution. A round of talks between U.S. and Iranian officials over Iran's nuclear program ended yesterday. A mediator said significant progress had been made and that talks would continue next week. Number 4. Hillary Clinton derided her Epstein deposition as political theater. Yesterday, the former Secretary of State appeared in front of the House Oversight Committee for hours of closed-door testimony in New York. She told the Republican-led panel that she didn't know Jeffrey Epstein and that she never went to his island, his homes, or his offices. And she sharply questioned why she had been deposed as part of investigations into the convicted sex offender. In a news conference after her deposition, she was asked if she would testify again publicly, as the Clintons had originally requested.
Oh, I'm not going to do it again. They had a chance to do it in public, and I wish they had done it in public. And I think they're making the wrong decision, avoiding doing it in public. I thought it was very repetitive. I thought that They asked literally the same questions over and over again, which didn't seem to me to be very productive. And then, as I said, toward the end, there were other questions that were totally off subject.
Those other topics included questions about UFOs and the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. The former First Lady did acknowledge in testimony that she had known Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, quote, casually as an acquaintance. Still, she said she had no relevant information to share. Today, her husband, former President Bill Clinton, is expected to answer questions. Number 5 is another post-exclusive. The Pentagon's showdown with AI firm Anthropic has escalated. The Pentagon wants Anthropic to allow it to use its tech for autonomous weapons and mass surveillance. It has given the company until 5:01 p.m. today to grant that permission. If they don't, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has threatened to use government powers to force them to. Late yesterday, Anthropic said it would not concede to that ultimatum. Tensions have been rising between the Defense Department and the tech company, and sources told the Post about one key sticking point. According to a defense official, the Pentagon's technology chief wanted Anthropic to answer a hypothetical question. Could the military use Anthropic's Claude AI system to help shoot down an intercontinental ballistic missile launched into the U.S.? The Pentagon and Anthropic have starkly different accounts of how the company answered. According to a defense official, Anthropic's CEO basically said that in that scenario, the government could call them to find out. That rankled the Pentagon. An Anthropic spokesperson, on the other hand, denied that account. They said the firm has agreed to allow its AI system to be used for missile defense. You can check how your area stacked up this winter as the U.S. experienced record snowfall. That's number 6. About 123 million people got above average snowfall during this winter season. That's the highest number in 5 years, and the second highest number in 12 years. It has coincided with the deepest winter cold in more than 2 decades for swaths of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. But, of course, different parts of the U.S. have been affected in different ways. Vermont had the highest average snowfall of any state, with 89 inches. In parts of the West, though, it's been a very different story with a record-shattering snow drought. In our newsletter today, you can follow a link to find out how your area has fared and whether it's received more or less snowfall than average this winter. And at number 7, ancient DNA reveals that Neanderthal males and human females had babies together. Since 2010, scientists have known that Neanderthals and our ancestors had offspring together. Those hybrid babies passed down their genes to many present-day people, like my husband. But a new study of ancient DNA reveals more about how the two closely related human species behaved when they interacted. They found that cross-species prehistoric pairings tended to follow a distinct pattern, with Neanderthal dads and Homo sapiens moms. The lack of Neanderthal DNA on the X chromosomes of modern humans implies a strong sex bias in mating over thousands of years. There are a few possible reasons why Neanderthal men and Homo sapiens women used to get it on. Some are more pleasant than others. But whatever the reason may be, the study reveals intriguing clues about the social dynamics of our ancient ancestors. That's the show for this week.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that right there is going to do it for the morning briefing. Let's get into our 8th reporting by The Hill, read by an automated voice. Ladies and gentlemen, so we will be taking a look, a read, as well as a listen. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe, as well as enjoy for more factual, non-fabricated, legal-breaking reportings, video analysis, updates, and more that you need to know about on this side of politics. Let's get into it. Without further ado, by The Hill, read by an automated voice.
Hillary Clinton criticizes UFO, Pizzagate questions from GOP during Epstein deposition. By Ryan Mancini. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on Thursday criticized questions she said she got from House Republicans about UFOs and the Pizzagate conspiracy during her deposition, as part of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee's investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. But then God at the end. Quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs and a series of questions about Pizzagate, one of the most vile bogus conspiracy theories that was propagated on the internet, that was serving as the basis of a member's questions to me. Clinton told reporters after her deposition in Chappaqua, New York. She added, however, I want to commend Chairman James Comer, Republican from Kentucky, for raising a series of significant questions that I responded to about the nature of the investigation and the areas that I thought should be explored. So I appreciated that. I want to see the truth come out. So that was a reassuring way to end a very long, repetitive deposition. Clinton said she answered every one of the committee's questions as fully as she could based on what she knew. I thought it was very repetitive, Clinton later said. I thought that they literally asked the same questions over and over again, which did not seem to me to be very productive. And then, as I said toward the end, there were several questions that were off subject. She said she never met with Epstein and that she knew his associate Ghislaine Maxwell casually as an acquaintance. She later said she was confident that the Department of Justice's DOJ files related to Epstein do not reveal anything that suggests her husband. Former President Clinton knew about Epstein's crimes. Clinton said she will not testify again and slammed the committee for not allowing the hearing to be in public, as she and Bill Clinton had pushed for, saying they could have spent their day more productively. Representative Suha's Subramaniam, Democrat from Virginia, hinted at the questions Clinton was asked during an appearance on CNN. Anchor Jake Tapper asked if it was true that the questions about UFOs and Pizzagate were asked during the deposition. I hope that the transcript will be released within 24 hours, Subramaniam told Tapper. I'm not allowed to say specifics about it, but I will just say that the transcript will be very revealing about that. Representative Nancy Mace, Republican from South Carolina, praised the hearing and wrote on the social platform X that Clinton gave U.S. plenty to work with today. So generous, in fact, that she gave U.S. plenty of ammunition heading into tomorrow's deposition with her husband. The Mace wrote, I got 3 rounds with her today and I'm just getting warmed up. The Clintons agreed to sit for depositions under threat of being held in contempt of Congress for defying a congressional subpoena. The former president, who flew on Epstein's plane a few times during the early 2000s and who appears in photos released as part of the Epstein files, is scheduled to sit for a deposition Friday. Controversy boiled over earlier in the deposition Thursday after Representative Lauren Boebert, Republican from Colorado, leaked a photo from inside the room, which was against the rules set out for the interview. Oversight Democrats called it unacceptable that Republicans broke their own committee rules that they established with the secretary and her team. Ranking member Robert Garcia, Democrat from California, said. When later asked about the photo, Boebert made a reference to the FBI's investigation into Clinton's use of a private email server while serving in the Obama administration. The issue became a key controversy during the final stretch of her 2016 presidential campaign. I just returned to my hotel room and installed the BleachBit software. So I guess in regards to taking photos, I do not recall, Boebert quipped to reporters. Updated at 8:43 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, let's get into our 9th factual, non-fabricated, legal breaking reportings, video analysis update, and more that you need to know about. Ladies and gentlemen, by the Hill. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy for more factual, non-fabricated, legal breaking reportings and video analysis updates and more that you need to know about on the side of politics. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get into it. By the Hill.
Pentagon draws scrutiny with Anthropic Threats, Defense Production Act. By Julia Shapiro and Philip Timitija. The Pentagon is threatening to use the Defense Production Act DPA against Anthropic amid a dispute over the company's restrictions on its AI tools, in a move that many experts say is an unusual use of the measure. The Department of Defense DoD warned Anthropic on Tuesday that it could invoke the DPA, which gives the president broad authority to control domestic industries in the name of national defense, to use the AI firm's tool on its own terms. The threat marks an escalation in the feud between the two parties. Negotiations appear to be at a standstill, with the Pentagon giving Anthropic until Friday to comply with its terms or face a cancellation of a $200 million contract and risk being labeled a supply chain risk and confronting the DPA. It is the wrong purpose of the tool, Mark Dalton, Senior Policy Director for Technology and Innovation at the R Street Institute, told The Hill. The DPA exists for a capacity reason, like it is an industrial capacity policy. And to use it as leverage is, I think, irresponsible. Anthropic and the Pentagon have been locked in tense negotiations in recent weeks over the company's AI usage policy, which bars its AI model Claude from being used to conduct mass surveillance or develop lethal autonomous weapons. These two issues have become the company's red lines in the dispute. A source familiar with negotiations told The Hill on Monday that Anthropic's resistance stemmed from concerns that AI systems are not reliable enough to make life or death decisions, and the technology significantly changes what is possible with domestic surveillance. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has pushed for the company to accept language that allows for all lawful uses. On Wednesday night, the DoD sent its last and final offer to Anthropic, asking the AI giant to allow the department to access Claude for all lawful purposes. A senior Pentagon official told The Hill on Thursday. CBS News reported earlier on the offer. Sean Parnell, chief Pentagon spokesperson, noted Thursday that the department has no interest in using AI to conduct mass surveillance of Americans, which is illegal, nor do we want to use AI to develop autonomous weapons that operate without human involvement. Here is what we're asking. Allow the Pentagon to use Anthropic's model for all lawful purposes, he wrote in a post on the social platform X. This is a simple, common-sense request that will prevent Anthropic from jeopardizing critical military operations and potentially putting our warfighters at risk. We will not let any company dictate the terms regarding how we make operational decisions. In a Thursday statement, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei accused the Pentagon of making inherently contradictory threats in negotiations with the company. Regardless, these threats do not change our position. We cannot in good conscience accede to the request, Amodei said. It is the department's prerogative to select contractors most aligned with their vision. He added, but given the substantial value that Anthropic's technology provides to our armed forces, we hope they reconsider. Our strong preference is to continue to serve the department and our warfighters with our 2 requested safeguards in place. Under Secretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, Emil Michael, who was at a Tuesday meeting between Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, similarly said Thursday that mass surveillance would be a violation of the 4th Amendment, and the Pentagon would never do it. The dispute is notable given that Anthropic Claude has so far been the only AI model available to the department on its classified systems. However, the department recently reached a new agreement with Elon Musk's XAI to use its AI model on the classified side. A Pentagon official told The Hill. While Google's Gemini and OpenAI's ChatGPT are close, negotiations came to a head Tuesday when Amodei met with Hegseth at the Pentagon, and the department gave the company an ultimatum: agree to its terms by 5:01 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday, or it will cancel their contract. The AI company was one of several firms, alongside Google, OpenAI, and XAI, that scored a $200 million contract with the Defense Department last summer. The Pentagon also upped the ante by raising the prospect of invoking the DPA and supply chain risk label. While the department may only be employing these threats as negotiating tactics, the potential use of the DPA is drawing scrutiny from experts and Democratic lawmakers. This is unprecedented, said Charlie Bullock, a senior research fellow at the Institute for Law and AI. He underscored that the Pentagon's DPA threat could fall outside the parameters of the statute or raise constitutional concerns, including under the First Amendment. It is mostly for traditional manufacturing in times of emergency, Dalton added. I get that everything feels emergent these days, but I do not see what national emergency using DPA for software company solves. Sends. Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, who is on the Senate Armed Services Committee, and Andy Kim, Democrat from New Jersey, argued that Congress passed the DPA to aid the U.S. economy in times of need, not to permit the Trump administration to extort American companies that refuse to help the Pentagon to surveil Americans or build killer robots. If Secretary Hegseth weaponizes the DPA against American companies, he will shatter the bipartisan consensus in support of a strong DPA, weakening our hand in competition with China and our ability to ensure American competitiveness, the pair said in a statement Wednesday. Previous administrations have invoked the DPA to boost production of goods during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Biden administration used the measure to up the production of baby formula, clean energy, and vaccines, as well as to require AI companies to share safety information with the federal government. During his first term, President Trump used the law to address ventilator shortages. He has used the measure in his second term to increase the nation's production of critical minerals. Title I of the DPA allows the president to require individuals or companies to prioritize or accept contracts as is necessary to promote the national defense, according to the Congressional Research Service. Several experts suggested this is likely the portion of the law that the Pentagon would turn to in this case. I do not believe he is abusing the law in doing so, said Greg Williams, director of the Center for Defense Information at the Project on Government Oversight POGO. However, I think it is unfortunate the Pentagon is not as interested as Anthropic appears to be in ensuring the safe, lawful, and ethical use of artificial intelligence, he added. Neil Chilson, the head of AI policy at the Abundance Institute, who is a critic of the expanding uses of DPA Title I, said the measures used in this case is more within the scope of defense and intent than in previous instances. Because we're talking about DoD procuring services for defense purposes, right? So at least at the very high level, this is closer to the intent of the statute, Chilson said in an interview with The Hill. Still, he said the Pentagon's threat of invoking the DPA is perhaps more aggressive, even if it is more within the sort of intent of the statute, compared with the use of the law by previous administrations. Following Tuesday's meeting, the Pentagon continued turning the screws on Anthropic, reaching out to defense contractors about its reliance on Claude, in what appears to be an initial step toward labeling the company a supply chain risk. A Lockheed Martin spokesperson confirmed to The Hill that the Pentagon reached out to the defense contractor about its usage of Claude. The spokesperson declined to say when exactly the DoD reached out. Axios first reported on the outreach. Boeing Defense, Space and Security, division of Boeing, does not have an active contract with Anthropic. A spokesperson confirmed to The Hill on Thursday. What seems really sketchy here is this, after the fact, trying to change the terms of a contract without going through the regular contract negotiation process, and what appears to be an abuse of labeling a contract a supply chain risk. Williams of Pogo said, a supply chain risk is somebody who might not deliver on something they have agreed to do, he added. As far as I understand it, Anthropic is not suggesting they would not deliver on the terms of their existing contract. James E. Baker, former chief judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, also argued there is a discrepancy between invoking the DPA and slapping the supply chain risk designation on a company. As former DoD official Greg Allen has stated, there is an inherent contradiction between threatening to designate a company a supply chain risk and using the DPA to compel provision of the company's services, Baker, who is now the director of the Syracuse University Institute for Security Policy and Law, told The Hill on Thursday. But Chilson of the Abundance Institute argued the Pentagon could both invoke the DPA and slap the supply chain risk designation on Anthropic. I think logically it would make sense to say, like, we need a tool that lets U.S. make decisions, he said. It does not make decisions for U.S., and if you're not going to provide that tool, then we are worried about the tools that you are providing to our downstream vendors. Jerry Magin, director of the Center for the Industrial Base at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, argued that if a company does not want to do work in a certain area and under certain conditions, they can pull out of the contract or the government can cancel it. The government has the vehicles they need to stop the work if they want and find another provider. Magin said in an interview with The Hill.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for our 10th our 9th legal breaking reporting video analysis update. Let's get into our 10th and final legal breaking reporting video analysis update for the hours of 10:40 a.m. Friday, February 27, 2026, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin, please like, comment, share, subscribe, as well as enjoy for more factual, non-fabricated, legal breaking reportings, video analysis, updates, and more that you need to know about that are, that is factual and non-fabricated, and more that you need to know about. Let's get into it by The Hill, ladies and gentlemen, read by an automated voice.
The big new controversy over the Epstein files explained by Niall Standage. When the Department of Justice released more than 3 million pages of documents relating to the convicted sexual predator Jeffrey Epstein on January 30th, the sheer volume of the material was dizzying. It always seemed plausible that important elements of the release would take time to emerge as reporters and researchers dug into the massive trawl. This is exactly what has happened. Major news outlets this week picked up on reporting, which first came from an independent journalist, about potentially vital documents that appear not to have been made publicly available. It is a complicated story. Here is what you need to know. What is the core of the controversy? Documents outlining 3 of 4 FBI interviews apparently related to a woman who accused President Trump, as well as Epstein, of sexually assaulting her decades ago, seem to be missing from the latest release. The woman made the claims in 2019, but they date back to the 1980s when she was a minor. Her allegation against Trump is uncorroborated. The president has denied all wrongdoing in relation to his friendship with Epstein, which ended roughly 2 decades ago. Also, The Guardian late on Thursday published a story in which it said its reporters had obtained the missing documents, and that the woman's claims, at times, appear outlandish. What is the broader explanation? The latest release of the Epstein files includes a 2021 catalog of material provided to Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team. Maxwell, Epstein's sometime girlfriend, was tried and convicted of sex trafficking charges at the end of that year. The dataset lists non-testifying witness material. It includes anonymized reference to 4 interviews relating to one person, who has the case number 3501.045. Of those 4 interviews, only one appears to have been publicly released. In that interview, the woman makes detailed allegations of rape by Epstein, but makes no allegation of abuse against Trump. The president is mentioned only in relation to a friend sending the woman a photograph. In her interview with FBI agents, the woman notes she still has this photo saved in her cell phone messages, but asks if she can crop it so it shows only Epstein. When she was asked why she wanted to crop the photo, she hesitated, and the notes reflect that her attorney advised she was concerned about implicating additional individuals, and
specifically any that were well known due to fear of retaliation. The photo, according to the FBI account of the interview, was a widely distributed photograph of Epstein and Trump. The strand of the Epstein story centering on this woman was first brought to light by independent journalist Roger Sollenberger. Sollenberger and subsequently outlets including NPR, the New York Times, and CNN have traced details about the woman in question that match a woman who made the serious but unproven allegation of sexual assault against Trump. Some commentators have pointed to the fact that 4 interviews took place as a sign that investigators believed the woman to be credible. But her credibility would not in itself prove any specific claim to be true. Furthermore, the Guardian story noted that it had identified a woman matching the biographical details in the FBI records. She has faced several fraud and theft charges in Washington, and in 2023, a felony charge for the exploitation of an elderly person in Georgia. It is not clear how those cases were resolved. What does the DOJ and the White House have to say? The Department of Justice DOJ is adamant that it has done nothing wrong, and is not hiding anything for nefarious reasons. In one social media post earlier this week, the DOJ said that nothing has been deleted, the post asserted. All responsive documents have been produced, unless a document falls within one of the following categories: duplicates, privileged, or part of an ongoing federal investigation. This has not quelled disquiet around the story, however. The Hill reported on Thursday that several Republican senators were putting pressure on the DOJ to release all possible files. Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, asked what material containing this woman's allegations should be held back. Replied, "I do not know how else to say it, release the documents." On Wednesday, the DOJ said that it was conducting a review because several individuals and news outlets have recently flagged files related to documents produced to Ghislaine Maxwell. It added that if any file was discovered to have been kept out of the public eye when it should not have been, the department will of course publish it, consistent with the law. Trump has not addressed this specific element of the controversy in any in-depth way, but speaking with reporters last week, he claimed he had been totally exonerated in the Epstein matter. White House statements to multiple news outlets this week have echoed that claim. What about Democrats? Democrats, especially those serving on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which has been probing the Epstein matter, have been scathing. On Wednesday, the House Oversight Democrats' account on the social platform X asserted, "The Department of Justice continues to change its story. The facts are clear. Documents related to a survivor who accused Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein of abuse when she was a minor are missing from the released files." Representative Robert Garcia, Democrat from California, the committee's ranking member, told Moyes Now on Tuesday that he had gone to the Department of Justice in person to probe the matter further. "Those additional documents seem to be missing," Garcia said, "and that is something that I confirmed as of yesterday in my visit to the Department of Justice. The idea that there is a possible cover-up, or that we are hiding actual documentation of an alleged crime by the President of the United States, is incredibly serious. Where does the story go from here? The focus on the story has become so intense that pressure for disclosure of the interview notes is intense. However, the new reporting from The Guardian may dilute at least some of that pressure. Meanwhile, the problem for those pressing for disclosure is, if the DOJ says it has valid reasons for not making the interviews public, it is hard to definitively prove them wrong."
Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for these legal breaking reportings, video analysis, updates that are factual and unfabricated. More that you need to know about. In the meantime, please look out for our next legal breaking reportings and video analysis updates. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have much more to come very, very soon, in about an hour to an hour and a half.